Gloria walked into the Greenwich Country Club, clutching her leather purse, walking proudly as if nothing could touch her. However, just a few minutes later, she was insulted in front of the powerful and wealthy people. No one expected how her son, Derek Samuels, the CEO of a large company, would stand up in such a situation. Gloria stepped out of the black Lincoln Navigator, her leather purse still firmly in hand, not a famous designer brand, but everything about her exuded undeniable elegance. Every detail, from the straight stitching to the serious demeanor in her steps, highlighted the poise of a mature woman. The white hat with a delicate ribbon was her signature piece, the same hat her husband once complimented, now also a part of her memories of him. The Greenwich Country Club stood silently under the clear sky. Derek had told his mother that the lunch would be simple. "Just come here, it's nothing complicated, just a small meeting with a light congratulation after the signing," he had said. Gloria was proud of Derek, of everything he had built, a logistics empire, from the early hard days in a warehouse in Trenton, now developed into a strong national supply chain infrastructure. And today, that empire was about to join a massive conglomerate, Hathaway, a family with deep roots and power. But Gloria paid no attention to such glamorous things. She came here simply to support her son, as he had asked. She had just stepped onto the marble stairs when a woman in a blue uniform interrupted her, standing in her way. "Sorry, but employees and deliveries must use the back entrance," she said, with no smile at all. Gloria tilted her head, trying to understand what was happening. "I'm here to have lunch with my son, Derek Samuels," she replied. But the woman just stood there, unresponsive, repeating, "Yes, if you're an employee or a server, the back entrance is the rule. It's to the left." Gloria blinked again, this time slower, a pang of hurt rising in her chest. This wasn't the first time she had been treated like this, but the pain never lessened. "I'm not an employee. I'm a guest," she said firmly, though the feeling of being hurt couldn't be erased. From across the porch, Derek Samuels lifted his glass of champagne, but his eyes couldn't leave his mother. He saw her being stopped by the woman in the uniform, and something tightened in his chest as he saw the blatant discrimination happening right in front of him. Gloria took a deep breath, trying to control the emotions rising in her. "You can check the list. My name is Gloria Samuels. My son is one of the owners meeting here today," she said, her voice steady despite the pain in her heart. Gloria Samuels walked into the Greenwich Country Club with pride, her hands tightly clutching a brown leather purse, highlighting her smooth, dark skin. Her thick, slightly curly hair reflected in the sunlight. But just a few minutes later, she was humiliated in front of billionaires. No one expected how her son, Derek Samuels, a successful CEO, would act so decisively. Gloria stepped out of the black Lincoln Navigator, her leather purse still in hand, not a standout designer piece, but everything about her reflected elegance. Her dark skin, smooth and radiant, further accentuated her noble beauty. Her steps were steady, and the lines of her face and body conveyed a serious demeanor, without needing to show anything more. The white wide-brimmed hat with a delicate ribbon was a gift from her late husband, now a symbol of a strong woman, one who stands tall no matter the circumstances. The Greenwich Country Club stood silently under the clear sky, without a cloud in sight. Derek had told his mother that the lunch would be very simple. "Just come here, no need to worry. Just a light lunch and congratulations after the signing," Derek had said. Gloria was proud of her son, of everything he had built. From a small warehouse in Trenton, Derek had created a powerful logistics empire with a nationwide supply chain. And today, that empire was about to join a large conglomerate, Hathaway, with a wealthy history and deep power. However, despite her son's great success, Gloria only cared about supporting him, standing by him through every challenge. But Gloria didn't care about what the Hathaway family valued. She was here just to support her son, as he had asked. As Gloria stepped onto the marble stairs, a woman in a blue uniform blocked her path. "Sorry, but employees and deliveries must use the back entrance," the woman said, her tone cold and unsympathetic. Gloria's eyes, with her smooth, dark skin, scanned over the woman, but she couldn't hide the confusion and pain at those words. Gloria tilted her head, slightly puzzled. "I'm here to have lunch with my son, Derek Samuels," she said, trying to remain calm. The woman didn't blink. "If you're an employee or a server, you have to use the back entrance," she responded, her face unchanged. Gloria blinked slowly, a sharp pang of hurt in her chest. This wasn't the first time she had been treated this way, but the pain was still fresh. "I'm not an employee, I'm a guest," she said, resolute but unable to mask her hurt. From across the porch, Derek Samuels raised his glass of champagne, his eyes scanning the wide lawn. He spotted his mother, standing there, blocked by the woman in the uniform. Something tightened in his chest as he saw the injustice his mother was enduring. Gloria took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. Although the woman had looked at her with contempt due to her dark skin, Gloria patiently replied, "You can check the list. My name is Gloria Samuels. My son is one of the owners of the meeting here today." Before the woman could respond, a sharp voice cut into the conversation, like glass scraping against tile. "Oh, I think they're letting anyone in now," Victoria Hathaway said, her pearls weighing heavily on her collar. "Are we now letting janitors dine with us?" Her words rang out, clearly an insult. Some heads turned, and a man chuckled softly. Derek sensed the change in the air. He was holding his champagne glass in the middle of a toast, but his smile disappeared immediately. His expression changed, no longer joyful, and he slowly set his glass down. His colleagues noticed the tension in his eyes. Bradley, the youngest son of the Hathaways, laughed nervously, suggesting that Victoria might just be joking. But Derek didn't pay attention to those words. He stood up without hesitation and walked straight toward his mother. Gloria looked up, trying to maintain her composure, but her grip on her purse tightened, feeling the sting of Victoria's words. Victoria didn't care in the slightest. She simply kept walking, oblivious to what she had just said. To her, it was just another day. Derek walked quickly toward his mother, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. He looked into her eyes, unable to hide his concern. "Are you okay?" Gloria nodded, but it was clear she wasn't. "I don't want to make a scene, dear," Gloria said, her voice calm, though the hurt still lingered. Derek looked at his mother, giving her a quiet, confident smile. "I know you wouldn't, but I will." He turned to the server, his gaze sharp. "This is my mother. You just showed disrespect to the most important person here." The woman opened her mouth but couldn't utter a word. She felt embarrassed and flushed. Derek didn't need to say anything more, as his gaze spoke volumes. Derek helped his mother back to his SUV, opening the door himself and assisting her inside. Gloria took his arm, as if trying to hold on to a precious moment. "Don't ruin this moment for me because of me," Derek said, looking at her with loving eyes. "You are the moment." He then closed the door and walked back to the marble stairs, maintaining his calm demeanor on the outside. But inside, a fire of anger still smoldered. What Derek did just a few hours later shocked not only the boardrooms, headlines, but also the powerful families from coast to coast. His story, a brown-skinned CEO standing up to protect his mother from blatant discrimination, created a stir in the business world. Back in the dining room, Derek's seat remained unchanged. The pen still lay beside a thick stack of papers, important documents for signing a multi-million-dollar deal. All the preparation he had made over the past year of negotiations now seemed irrelevant, left only with silence. After over a year of tense negotiations, with countless strategies and plans put into place, this day had finally arrived. A sparkling champagne tower stood near the window, but nothing mattered to Derek. His mind was no longer focused on everything that had been perfectly arranged, for something tightened within his chest. Derek's mood changed as soon as he entered the room. There were no shouts, no angry declarations, only heavy silence. Everyone in the room could feel the tension, but no one dared to point out the storm cloud that hung in the air. "Is everything all right?" Preston Ward, the general counsel of Hathaway, asked. His voice tried to sound calm, but there was noticeable anxiety in it. It was the voice of a man trying to maintain composure while sensing a serious problem, but unsure where it was coming from. Derek didn't rush to answer. He scanned the room, looking at the board members, the family, and the lawyers. But in the end, his gaze stopped at Victoria Hathaway. Victoria Hathaway sat there, sipping her drink, one leg crossed as if she didn't care about Derek's interruption. She wasn't just comfortable, she was certain the deal had been sealed. She sat there with a smug expression, as if everyone else had to bow to her family's influence. Derek walked toward his chair, but didn't sit down. He placed both hands on the back of the chair, looking into the eyes of everyone in the room. "I have something to say," he said. Some people looked up, sensing the change in the atmosphere. The room immediately fell silent. Every eye was on Derek, as if everyone was waiting for something. "You all know how important this deal is," he continued, "not just for our companies, but for the markets and the next level of infrastructure for this country. This merger will change everything." Derek paused, looking into the faces of everyone in the room, as if he were searching for agreement. "But I'm not signing it," he said, his voice resolute. The silence lasted a few seconds before whispers began to rise. "Wait, what?" someone in the room asked, surprised. Victoria turned her head slowly, not rushing, but quick enough to realize that Derek's words were like a slap in the face, breaking her smugness. Victoria spoke with a slightly sarcastic tone, but couldn't hide her discomfort. Derek merely nodded, responding coldly. "I'm truly sorry." Preston couldn't bear the tension and spoke up. "Is this a negotiation tactic?" He tried to sound calm. "Derek, if there's an issue, we can go back to the negotiating table." Finally, Derek sat down, but not at the signing chair. He sat at the farthest chair from the agreement. "No, there's no more table," he said, his voice calm but full of determination. Victoria sneered softly and then leaned forward, her smile not reaching her eyes. She appeared smug, but she didn't realize that everyone in the room felt the change in the air. "Let's not overreact to a simple misunderstanding," Victoria said, trying to remain calm. "I didn't recognize that woman, that's all." Derek blinked slowly, his gaze sharp as fire. "That woman is my mother. Now I know that," he replied, his voice firm, unable to suppress the rising anger. "But of course—" "No!" Derek interrupted her firmly, his voice soft but full of certainty. "I know what I'm doing. I say what I want to say, Victoria." Preston cleared his throat, trying to remain calm. "We've invested millions into prep. Both sides have committed. There are legal implications here." Derek leaned back, uninterested in Preston's words. "Then I'll meet you in court. You can explain to the judge why disrespecting my family was part of your strategy," Victoria muttered, her voice almost losing patience. "Don't get emotional." She reassured herself. Derek didn't let it go. He leaned forward, arms crossed. "Do you think I built this company from a corner office? I loaded trucks, Victoria. I drove at 3 a.m. I ran payroll from a folding table when we couldn't afford an accountant. I watched my mother ride the bus to clean houses for others, just so I could turn on the lights in my apartment. And when my mother shows up here in her best suit, proud as can be, and you humiliate her, you humiliate me," Derek nearly growled, the anger now uncontrollable. No one dared to speak. Then Derek stood up one final time, his gaze still cold. "There are deals that keep you awake at night, wondering if you should have signed, but this is not one of them." He walked out without any files or papers. No handshake, just the heavy silence left behind. But the next morning, silence was no longer an option for anyone involved in this story. The media quickly picked up the story. The first outlet was a podcast about small businesses in Philadelphia, where a guest revealed that the Black CEO had backed out of a $900 million deal just because his mother had been publicly disrespected by a wealthy white family. Just the headline alone caused an uproar. The headline immediately made waves. By noon, channels like Tech Pulse, Forbes, and Business Today were covering the story. By 5 p.m., cable news editors were arguing over it. The story was no longer just about a failed deal, but about why it failed. The story quickly spread, not because of the failed deal, but because of the reason behind it. A camera had caught Derek Samuels entering his office in downtown Newark the following morning. No sunglasses, no entourage, just Derek Samuels, a brown CEO, holding a cup of coffee, nodding to the receptionist as usual. He didn't need the luxury, just calm and strength. A reporter shouted, "Do you think the comments about the Hathaway family were the reason you canceled the deal?" Another chimed in, "Do you regret walking away from $900 million?" Those insulting questions felt like they were putting him on trial right there. Derek didn't rush to answer, simply saying, "No." His voice was cold, unwavering. Inside the building, Derek's team kept receiving calls. Some investors were confused, others were angry, but surprisingly, some felt proud of his actions. It seemed Derek's decisiveness had touched the hearts of those who hadn't been seen. Derek's inbox flooded with messages. CEOs from other companies, warehouse workers, teachers, even retired veterans all thanked him for not letting disrespect go unchallenged. They respected Derek not because of his wealth, but because of the resolve and dignity he stood up for. That afternoon, Derek scheduled a press conference without any press kit or fancy backdrop. Just a simple podium, a folding table, and 20 reporters packed into a small conference room. Nothing fake, just the truth that needed to be said. Derek stepped up to the podium, looking tired but steady. "I didn't cancel the deal for the money," he began, his voice resolute. "I canceled it because once you let disrespect into the room, it spreads, and I can't build the future on silence. I wasn't raised to be silent in the face of discrimination, and I won't build the future on that silence." A CNBC reporter asked if Victoria Hathaway had truly said those disrespectful words publicly. Derek didn't hesitate. "Yes, loud enough for those nearby to hear, loud enough for my mother to feel." Some people might argue that this wasn't a reason to walk away from a multi-million-dollar deal, but Derek didn't care. Another reporter chimed in, but Derek just looked at him, unaffected. Derek nodded slowly. "It depends on the kind of company you're trying to build," he said. The room was so silent that you could hear the breaths. Derek didn't need to say anything else. "Respect is non-negotiable, and if we start trading that for a contract, then we've already lost." Finally, Derek stood up and left, just like the day before. But this time, the world outside the meeting room had changed. Everything he stood for, both his family and personal values, had now become a symbol of a necessary change. In places where people usually whispered, they suddenly spoke loudly about Derek, about what he represented, about respect and dignity that should never be undermined. That same night, clips of Derek's speech began to spread on TikTok, X, and YouTube. A former employee of the Hathaway family shared their story about having to use the service elevator at a charity event. A Latinx server also shared their story about being asked to remove their apron before being allowed into the hall. Gloria blinked slowly, a sharp pang of hurt in her chest. This wasn't the first time she had been treated this way, but the pain was still fresh. "I'm not an employee, I'm a guest," she said, resolute but unable to mask her hurt. From across the porch, Derek Samuels raised his glass of champagne, his eyes scanning the wide lawn. He spotted his mother, standing there, blocked by the woman in the uniform. Something tightened in his chest as he saw the injustice his mother was enduring. Gloria took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. Although the woman had looked at her with contempt due to her dark skin, Gloria patiently replied, "You can check the list. My name is Gloria Samuels. My son is one of the owners of the meeting here today." Before the woman could respond, a sharp voice cut into the conversation, like glass scraping against tile. "Oh, I think they're letting anyone in now," Victoria Hathaway said, her pearls weighing heavily on her collar. "Are we now letting janitors dine with us?" Her words rang out, clearly an insult. Some heads turned, and a man chuckled softly. Derek sensed the change in the air. He was holding his champagne glass in the middle of a toast, but his smile disappeared immediately. His expression changed, no longer joyful, and he slowly set his glass down. His colleagues noticed the tension in his eyes. Bradley, the youngest son of the Hathaways, laughed nervously, suggesting that Victoria might just be joking. But Derek didn't pay attention to those words. He stood up without hesitation and walked straight toward his mother. Gloria looked up, trying to maintain her composure, but her grip on her purse tightened, feeling the sting of Victoria's words. Victoria didn't care in the slightest. She simply kept walking, oblivious to what she had just said. To her, it was just another day. Derek walked quickly toward his mother, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. He looked into her eyes, unable to hide his concern. "Are you okay?" Gloria nodded, but it was clear she wasn't. These stories quickly gained attention and reflected the blatant discrimination. This topic received thousands of shares within hours. Derek hadn't planned this. He hadn't tried to start a movement. But sometimes it only takes one person to stand up, one black person with resolve, and others will find their voice. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, the Hathaway team was scrambling. In an emergency meeting, Clinton Hathaway, Victoria's eldest son, who had almost been absent from the negotiations, asked the question no one wanted to face. "Do we have to apologize?" Clinton asked, his face filled with doubt. Victoria frowned, her voice hard. "I won't apologize to those who overreact. The way they behave, like they've never had to face anything hard." "You insulted that man's mother, Vic!" A voice rang out, full of anger. "Do you think nothing will happen when you insult someone publicly, right at the contract signing?" She argued that we've had worse words spoken in this room, but no one lost $1 billion over it. Clinton muttered, as if trying to downplay the issue. However, the numbers no longer favored them. Shareholders began questioning. Brand analysts warned about the irreparable loss of credibility. Even their PR firm started hesitating, afraid to intervene to scrub away the story. By that weekend, the Hathaway name had been seriously damaged. People began recalling stories they had tried to bury. Previous encounters now became whispers, and there was a suffocating atmosphere whenever anyone had to face the truth. Those once seen as the elite, the long-established wealthy families, were now viewed with new eyes. The power they held was no longer respect but contempt hidden beneath a fake smile. While the Hathaway family scrambled to stop any consequences, Derek faced a new pressure. This time, it wasn't from outside, but from those within his circle. Inside the Newark headquarters, the atmosphere remained tense. Derek's decision had turned him into a symbol in the eyes of the public. But being a symbol also brought weight, pressure, and constant scrutiny from every direction. Some of this was done quietly, silently behind closed doors, but some wasn't, and it began to spread like an underground wave. Derek met with his executive team in the upstairs conference room, a large glass space overlooking Market Street. Most of these people had been with him from the beginning, some even from the days when he only had a warehouse in Trenton. But loyalty comes in layers, and not everyone held firm to their stance. Elliot Trammell, Derek's CFO, was the first to speak up, expressing his dissatisfaction. "We need to discuss the long-term implications of this decision, not just this week or the next 6 months," Elliot said, his voice tense. "We've built an international infrastructure tightly linked to this merger." "I know," Derek responded calmly. "We're facing backlash from the legal side. Huawei is currently drafting a breach of contract complaint. Their lawyers claim I canceled the deal for personal reasons. But for me, this isn't personal." "This isn't personal," Derek said, his gaze cold. "This is about principle. I won't trade my principles for money, especially when my family is disrespected just because of our skin color." "But do we have the ability to pay the principal right now?" Julian Ricks, Derek's CEO, asked, his face full of concern. "We're still just a C-level company," Julian continued. "Do you think the board won't panic?" Derek looked at Julian, his gaze steadfast, as if to say that he was ready to face any consequences. "Let them do so," he said, his voice calm but decisive. His words made the room fall silent, everyone unsure how to react. After a moment of silence, Nia Whitlow, the marketing director, leaned forward. "Derek, I support your decision. I truly believe you did the right thing. But you must understand, Derek, you've now become a headline, a symbol. People are calling you the man who gave up generational wealth to protect his mother from insult and discrimination. That's not easy. Now you're the man who said no to $1 billion just because someone insulted his mother in public, because of her skin color. I said no to being owned and controlled by a bunch of arrogant rich people," Derek replied, his voice deep and firm. "I get it," Nia said, but her gaze remained fixed on Derek. "But Elliot is right. If you don't control the story, others will exploit this opportunity. We've seen it before. Some investors are starting to worry." "This morning I received 2 calls," Nia continued. "They want reassurance, a clear plan about what's going to happen next." Derek stood up and walked toward the window. Looking outside, the city continued with its bustling pace. Traffic was moving, and a mother was holding her child's hand tightly as they crossed the street. The simple scene made Derek think of his mother, Gloria, who had struggled every day to raise him. He thought of Gloria, his strong black mother. She had to overcome so many challenges in a world that constantly tried to belittle her, even just stepping up marble stairs in Greenwich. "Anyway, I won't teach anyone that power means swallowing everything." Derek said finally, his voice full of resolve. Not here, not with me, and not for money, Derek said, his eyes never leaving Julian. Julian leaned back, frustration clearly visible on his face. Fine, but what if we collapsed because of this? Julian asked, feeling like everything was slipping out of control. Then we'll rebuild, Derek said, unwavering, but at least we won't be rotten from the inside. The room fell silent. Then Nia nodded, followed by Elliot, and finally Julian reluctantly shrugged, agreeing. A shift in mindset had occurred in the room. We'll stand firm, Elliot said. For now, not everyone agrees, but something has changed in this room. Maybe it's respect, maybe it's fear, maybe both. Maybe it's respect, maybe it's fear, maybe both. The room fell silent, each person feeling that a big change had occurred. But outside those walls, not everyone is willing to stand by you, especially those who bet on bonuses, those who've judged you by your skin color and background. 2 days later, Derek's phone buzzed. A message from Theron Ingram, his cousin and co-founder. We need to talk in person, a short, anxious line. They met at a small diner in West Orange, where in the early days they had sketched their first business plan on a napkin. Theron arrived early, already sipping coffee, his eyes full of worry. Derek walked in, sitting across from him, and immediately felt the tension fill the space. This morning I heard from Monroe Bank, Theron said, not wasting any time. They've suspended our credit line, the one we were going to use to expand operations on the West Coast, and now everything is shaky. Derek nodded, not surprised. I figured they could do that, Derek said, his gaze unshaken. Theron stared at Derek. Do you get it, Derek? We were right there. This wasn't some random acquisition. This is our generation's leap, our children's future. But I'm not going to let that future be built on the humiliation of my mother. I won't let that future be built on the humiliation of my mother, Derek replied, his voice firm. Theron shook his head, eyes tightly shut, a clear disappointment. Did you ever think that maybe it was her fight to choose, not yours, Derek? Derek leaned forward, his eyes lighting up. She's not fighting. She's being trampled, Theron. Theron sighed, his gaze sorrowful. This isn't like back in Trenton. You made decisions for all of us without asking. And now everyone's saying you did it for power, because you're the black man in a world of the rich and powerful. I did it because I was raised not to sell my name for a seat at someone else's table, especially not at the table of these racists. They sat down, lips pressed tightly. The fortunate ones in society called him a hero, but he knew that wouldn't last long, because someone like him, with his skin color, would always be viewed with suspicion. Derek stood up, tossing a $20 bill on the table. If not, I'll still sleep just fine, he said, eyes never leaving Theron. But deep inside, Derek knew that the real storm hadn't hit yet. It was only just beginning, and it wouldn't stop until the Hathaway family made their next move. And this time, they wouldn't just attack him, they would target everyone who stood with him. The Hathaway estate in Greenwich was built like a fortress, with marble walls, an old iron gate, and hedges trimmed as if a military unit was guarding it. Everything carried the mark of power and class division. Inside the main study, the Hathaway family gathered around a long mahogany table. The atmosphere was suffocating, rigid, no one daring to take a sip of the wine poured, as if afraid that the slightest gesture would shatter their arrogance. Victoria Hathaway sat at the head of the table, her hands clasped beneath her chin, her expression unreadable, as if she was studying the prey before her. Clinton, her eldest son, paced nervously. Bradley skimmed through his phone, his eyes darting back and forth, a sign of tension. The only one still sitting at ease was Ella Wynn, the PR director, but her face revealed calculation. She said they needed to make a statement right away, a brief statement acknowledging the incident, expressing regret, and emphasizing shared values. But Victoria, with a mocking smile, disagreed. What values? Victoria scoffed. That woman looked like she didn't belong here. And don't forget, this isn't my fault. If she didn't want to be disrespected, maybe she should know her place. Elena blinked slowly. So she just said that loudly in front of her son while I'm trying to protect her legacy, huh? Clinton stopped, his eyes full of worry. Mom, Derek walking out has severely impacted our tech portfolio. Do you understand how bad this is? Victoria, with unshakable confidence, said, "He'll come back." "They always do, Clinton. His pride will fade when the money starts to run out." Elena slammed the folder shut, her eyes tense. "You don't understand. This is no longer just about a deal. This is a cultural issue. He touched my heart by hitting the self-respect of our family." Bradley looked up from his phone, his face filled with concern. "People are calling him a hero, Mom. They're reposting that speech, quoting him as if he's a symbol of civil rights. Rights for people like him." Victoria waved her hand as if dismissing the whole matter. "They'll forget by next week. Those who only care about money will quickly forget." Clinton looked at Victoria as if she were an old cracked painting. "They won't forget. Mom, you've become a symbol of racism within the elite. Every podcast, every headline is now tied to your image. And you still haven't apologized despite what you've caused," Clinton said bluntly. "I won't let you make our family lose everything. You've already cost us a big deal." Victoria slowly turned to look at Clinton, her gaze icy. "Are you going to side with them?" "No," Clinton answered firmly. "I stand with the truth. Not the arguments driven by money, but what's right." The room fell silent, heavy. Victoria's empire, built on the foundations of division and control, was beginning to crumble. No press release, no matter whose, could erase that moment on the rooftop where racism was laid bare. Victoria's sharp voice and her look of self-satisfaction still echoed in Derek's mind. And Gloria's gaze, his strong black mother, was deeply etched into his soul. Finally, the Hathaway family had to issue a statement, but it wasn't a sincere apology. It was a deceitful, excuse-filled lie. "It's bland, cold, full of legal jargon and meaningless regret," Derek thought as he listened to Hathaway's statement. "The Hathaway Corporation deeply regrets the recent misunderstanding that led to the termination of the merger process. But beneath that veneer, they still maintain their racism, with their fake values of inclusivity and mutual respect." Derek didn't respond publicly, but his silence made everyone think. His silence was more valuable than any post. He didn't let their fake apologies distract him, but continued to build, to keep his principles intact. Meanwhile, journalists had dug deep into Derek's background. Images of Derek as a young man, delivering goods in Newark, a picture of struggle and effort, began to circulate. A quote from his old teacher, who recalled Derek staying after school to study business books, quickly went viral, a testament to his resilience. A clip from a podcast was also shared, in which Derek said with conviction, "I'm not trying to join anyone's club. I'm trying to build my own house. A house not controlled by those with power, just because I have colored skin." Meanwhile, Gloria, Derek's mother, had become a well-known figure. She appeared briefly in the morning news, sitting in a simple chair, her hand resting gently on her lap, with the calm strength that needed no show. "I don't want to be noticed," Gloria said, but her determined gaze revealed something deeper. "I raised my son to speak up when silence becomes too costly, especially when that silence can harm people like us." The host asked if Gloria wanted Derek to sign the contract right away. She smiled gently but firmly. "Some money comes with chains, but I'm too old to wear shackles now. I've lived too long to understand that respect cannot be bought with money." The clip spread like wildfire on the internet. Influencers repeated Gloria's words as if she had ignited the flame of injustice. Young entrepreneurs quoted it in seminars, and companies quietly began pulling out of partnerships with Hathaway, not because of Derek, but because of what Victoria represented, a symbol of racism and classism. In an age where reputation spreads faster than reality, the perception of Victoria and the Hathaway family had become the reality. And that reality was changing fast, uncontrollably. However, Derek wasn't reveling in it. He continued his work, meeting with partners, hiring new staff, and visiting his mother every Sunday, bringing her fresh gardenias and banana pudding from her favorite bakery in Trenton. But just as things seemed to stabilize, an unexpected phone call pulled Derek back into the spotlight. Not for what he had walked away from, but for what someone else had dug up. The call came just after 8 p.m., when Derek was alone in his office handling drafts. He almost didn't want to pick up, but something urged him to answer. In the dim office, Derek was working on drafts, the silence thick with the tension in the air. The cleaning staff moved quietly through the floors below, unaware of what was awaiting him. "Mr. Samuels?" The sharp, hoarse voice on the other end of the line said, as if it came from someone who had lived their whole life under oppression. "I don't want to cause trouble, but you need to know what they're doing to you." "I'm calling because you need to know what they're doing," the voice continued coldly. Derek sat up straight. "Who is this?" he asked. "I've worked with the Hathaway family for 15 years. I'm part of their legal acquisition team. But you're not the first name they've tried to erase when they didn't get their way. They're preparing to sue you back," the voice emphasized. "They'll dig into your initial submission, your first funding round, and label you unstable. They'll say you're erratic, unpredictable, even claiming you're bringing politics into business, destroying their shareholders' value. They're hoping everyone will forget why you left in the first place, because in their eyes, people like you, with your skin color, don't deserve respect." Derek leaned back, staring out the high window, dark thoughts running through his mind. "And why are you telling me this?" he asked, his voice almost cold. "Because I've seen this before. They'll destroy you and then deny it, especially when you, with your skin color, dare to stand up against them. They won't let it slide. They'll bury you, but quietly and without fanfare." The line went dead, and Derek sat there motionless, the weight of the thoughts pressing down on him. He knew the Hathaway family didn't play fair, but this was a bigger fight, and they wouldn't stop with his name. They would attack his reputation, his team, even his mother if necessary. He called Whitlow's office the next morning. Nia said, unsurprised. "They're after you. Victoria never loses quietly. She'll turn your story into a weapon and reverse the narrative. Make everyone think you're the invader, just because you dared stand up against them?" "Let her try," Derek replied, his eyes sharp as knives. "But Nia's already 5 steps ahead. We need to show everyone who you are before she tries to say who you're not." Nia began immediately. Within 48 hours, a new media campaign was launched. No slogans, no fanfare, just honest stories from people who had worked with Derek. Warehouse workers and investors shared testimonials about Derek's transparency and integrity during the difficult times. Former interns also shared videos about how he helped them without any cameras, without any show. But the most powerful video came from Gloria. Sitting in a simple living room, she stared directly at the camera and said, "I didn't raise my son to become just a businessman. I raised him to be a man who stands tall when he needs to, even if it costs everything." Her words struck like lightning, not only touching Derek's heart, but making the whole world listen. Cable news couldn't ignore this. The hashtags quickly became trending, and suddenly the Hathaway family's strategy, subtle accusations, and attempts to discredit Derek began to reveal its true nature, a bitterness that was undeniable. However, the Hathaway family had no intention of stopping. A week later, Hathaway Group released documents aimed at proving that Derek had violated the initial terms of the 20-year partnership agreement with Stratus Line Logistics. This was subtly implied to show Derek's history of sudden breakups, but Stratus CEO, Leonard Greer, immediately responded the same day, refuting this. "Derek canceled the deal with us because he refused to accept wage cuts for our drivers," Leonard Greer said. "I wish I had the courage he does." But it backfired. The story once again slipped from the Hathaway family's control. Every effort to regain control only deepened the wound they still refused to acknowledge, and their apologies never came. Inside the Hathaway home, Victoria felt the walls closing in. Contracts were breaking, invitations to events vanished. A museum board had stripped her of her honorary seat. Everything she had built over the years was slowly crumbling. But Victoria didn't blame herself. Never. She saw this as just a passing trend, a wave of anger that would blow over and eventually fade. She yelled at Clinton during breakfast. She said, "The online outrage is just temporary. It'll pass." But Clinton wasn't as sure anymore. "It's not going anywhere, Mom," he replied. "Our company is under attack, and it won't fade as quickly as you think." She silently took a sip of her coffee, looking at her son, as if the conversation only made her more tired. "Then the family business doesn't need you anymore," Clinton said, standing up, his voice full of anger. Victoria didn't respond immediately, but her hand trembled slightly. This was the first time after everything that she truly felt the loss. While the Hathaway family was losing its footing, Derek was about to face a truth, one not related to money but to legacy. Derek stood in the backyard of his mother's house in Trenton, watching her trim the basil from the small planter box they had built together 2 summers ago. The sun had set, casting a soft orange light over the grass. Gloria wore her old church dress, faded by the years but still neatly ironed, a testament to her resilience in every circumstance. Gloria didn't speak much, just moving slowly, methodically. Though the weight of the past few weeks had worn her down, she didn't let it show. Every step she took was a testament to perseverance, despite the hardships and discrimination she had endured her whole life. Derek knew better than anyone. He couldn't ignore the change in his mother. "Mom," he said, his voice soft but filled with concern, "are you okay with all this attention?" Gloria didn't look up. She kept working, only gently responding, "Attention? Don't bother me." "But you know what comes with it," Derek said, his voice firm. "What do you mean?" Gloria clipped another basil leaf and gently placed it into her bowl, unhurried. "They don't like it when we walk out of a room with our heads held high, Derek. They feel threatened, they feel small. So they try to make us feel smaller," Gloria said, her gaze filled with sadness. Derek sat down on the front steps, his hands clenched. "They're still trying to manage it as if I ruined the deal for nothing important." Finally, she looked at him, gently but with determination. "You know it's nothing. And anyone who says otherwise doesn't understand the value of respect, especially for someone like me." Derek nodded, saying nothing, but inside he felt sorrow. "It feels like I've taken something from my family," he said, his voice choked. Gloria walked over and sat down next to him. "Sweetheart, every family has its storms, but if you bow your head in the storm, then what will you leave behind for those who come after? People like us, always seen as different." "I just want to protect you," Derek said, his voice softening. "And you have," she replied, "but not just for me. The point is, now you represent something. Don't run from it, Derek. Not everyone gets the chance to stand up like you." That night back at his apartment in Jersey City, Derek rewatched the news footage from his press conference. He didn't like hearing himself on camera. Too polished, too cautious, not like the way he had lived through the hard years. "That's not how I was raised to speak," Derek told himself. "But now the world listens to every word as if it's a policy statement." Derek's phone buzzed. The message from Leonard Greer, CEO of Stratus, came through. "The DC board wants to meet with you. They're building a committee around ethical business practices, and they want you to lead." Derek stared at the screen, deep in thought. "I never asked for this. I just wanted to build something sustainable, honest. But now my story has become something much bigger." And with that, a pressure he hadn't anticipated. The next morning, he met with Nia and Julian. This time, the atmosphere in the room had changed. No loud voices, only tired eyes and heavy sighs, as if everyone feared something was about to happen. Julian spoke first, his face filled with concern. "We've stabilized. This is good news," Nia followed. "And the noise is actually helpful, not harmful. 3 logistics companies have already expressed interest in partnering with us. But the price of silence may be the most expensive price to pay," Derek said, his gaze resolute. Quietly but firmly, Derek said, "We've protected something, and that's why I don't regret it." Nia gently corrected him. "Not because you've protected something, but because you've stood up for what's right." Derek paused, reflecting. "And now they want me to speak out. They want me to lead committees, participate in boards, and become the face of a new movement." Julian spoke up. "Maybe that's the next step, Derek. You've built a business. Now it's time to build your voice." Derek wasn't sure. "I don't want to be a symbol," he said, his gaze sorrowful. "Symbols are heavy. People only worship them when they suit them, and then they'll tear them down when they're no longer useful. That's not the life I want." But he also knew that silence had a very steep price. He picked up the dry erase marker, his sharp eyes focused on the whiteboard. Numbers, timelines, expansion plans, all just the next steps in his career. Nothing glamorous, just the beginning of something new. "Scale without them," he said, his voice calm but determined. Let's prove that we didn't need that deal from the start. Nia smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. Now that's the Derek I remember. Julian chuckled and said, "It took you a while to come around, but now it's done." But Derek wasn't finished. He pointed to the calendar. "Next week I want to host an event here. Not a press conference, but a real event. A community day for the warehouse team, interns, and lower-level staff. Food, music, everyone will participate. Remind everyone who we are," Nia asked, her expression focused. "No," Derek replied. "It'll be like a family reunion. Everyone gets a plate, no matter where they come from." But before he could arrange everything, a final letter arrived, unrelated to the Hathaway family. But it left Derek stunned. The envelope was thin, off-white, with no return address. Only Derek typed neatly in the center. It was sent via regular mail, mixed in with bills and supplier proposals. At first, Derek didn't pay attention, not even opening it until the office was quiet, with only the faint hum of the cleaning staff in the hallway. The letter inside was handwritten, neat and deliberate, as though the writer had spent time practicing before picking up the pen. "Mr. Samuel," the letter began, "you don't know me, but I know who you are. My father was the groundskeeper at Highway Ridge from 1985 until he passed in 2009. My father raised me and my two sisters in this work, waking up before dawn, never complaining. He taught us to be proud, even when everyone looked at us like invisible ghosts, people who were never called by name. I saw your story on the news and I couldn't hold back my tears. Not because I was surprised by how your mother was treated, but because for the first time, someone dared to say no, truly say no, not for personal gain. You remind me of my father. Though he didn't have the background you do, he didn't have wealth, but he had something few possess. True backbone. He worked tirelessly, though no one saw it. I just want you to know that not everyone forgets where they come from, and not everyone sells their honor to climb. Camille Pierce, with deep respect." Derek read the letter again, then slowly folded it and placed it on the table, feeling an invisible weight on his chest. The name Camille Pierce felt like a thorn in Derek's heart. He searched his inbox, checked every email, but found only silence. Nothing. Just one letter sent by regular mail, mixed in with bills and supplier proposals. That evening, Derek sat down for dinner with his mother and told her about the letter. Gloria listened, her eyes focused on the vegetables on her plate. "My father was the groundskeeper at Hayway Ridge, and he always worked hard without ever complaining. You make me think of my father," she said, her voice gentle but carrying the strength of someone who had lived through many hardships. Gloria looked off into the distance, her eyes filled with sorrow. "It's strange how the truth eventually finds you. No matter how many struggles you face, it will find you, whether you want it or not." Derek simply nodded, not needing to say anything else. He understood, and what he felt wasn't regret, but a heavy responsibility weighing on him. The letter was a burden that couldn't be discarded, not because of regret, but because of its profound meaning. Now Derek realized he was carrying too much responsibility, not just for his family, but for those who had placed their trust in him. It was incredible to know that his choice had reached someone like Camille, who had lived in the shadow of the Hathaway family for decades. The next day, Derek asked Nia to find information about Camille. He needed to know where she was. 2 days later, Nia got back to him, saying she had found Camille, a fourth-grade teacher in Harrisburg who didn't use social media, living in a small apartment with a rescue dog. "She doesn't expect you to reply," Nia said. "But Derek, you can visit her." Derek nodded. "I'll go there. No need to call ahead. I'll knock on the door." 2 days later, Derek stood in front of Camille's small apartment, holding a paper bag from a local bakery, feeling an emotion he hadn't felt in a long time. Camille opened the door after the second knock. She looked about 40, with brown ponytail hair, wearing simple jeans and a sweatshirt, her eyes a mix of concern and curiosity. When she saw Derek, Camille paused. "You're Derek," she exclaimed. "And here's banana bread. I thought you'd like this. Maybe you're tired of people just wanting to use you." Camille raised her eyebrows and then chuckled lightly. "Come on in, before my dog decides to treat you like dinner." Inside, the cozy apartment had the air of a humble home. On the mantel, there was a picture of her late father, dressed in work clothes and old boots. his eyes filled with pride. Derek approached, studying the picture closely. "Your father?" he asked. She nodded, a strange smile passing across her face. "He worked at Highway Ridge like it was his property," Camille said, her voice calm. "I understand that feeling." Camille invited Derek to sit down and made tea. The room was filled with silence, only the sound of boiling water and soft whispers between the two of them. She spoke about her tough father, how he refused to call the Hathaway family Mr. and Mrs., how he could only save through every single penny on his checks, and how he taught her to read contracts and bills, things society never valued. "My father would have liked you," Camille continued, "not because you've succeeded, but because you know when to stop, know when not to keep getting used." They talked for 2 hours. Nothing was recorded, no hashtags, just a deep connection between them, a history they both couldn't forget, even though no one asked for it. As Derek was about to leave, Camille handed him an old photo. In the picture, her father stood under a tall oak tree, holding a rake, his eyes filled with pride, even though his life had been hard. "When the world spins again and the noise won't stop," Camille said, her eyes lighting up, "you'll understand the value of what you protect." Derek thanked her, carefully slipping the photo into his jacket pocket, feeling a heavy heart but also a sense of peace, then walked out. "Sometimes," Derek muttered, "the strongest lessons don't come from what people say on television. They come from handwritten words and old oak trees, the things people often overlook." And now Derek had to face the crucial moment to see if what he had protected could withstand the test, if it could stand firm against the inevitable personal losses. It all started with a voicemail from the nurse, just a routine request, but her voice sounded worried. "It's nothing urgent," she said. Gloria had fainted during Bible class, and they had taken her to Capital Care Hospital in Trenton. Derek couldn't wait, his heart heavy with worry. Without hesitation, Derek left the meeting midway, grabbed the car keys and sped down the highway, his nerves tight, his teeth clenched. When he arrived, Gloria was sitting on the hospital bed, looking uncomfortable but still trying to sip a ginger ale, as if there was nothing to worry about. "I told them I just stood too long," Gloria said when Derek walked in. "No need to make a fuss." But Derek could see the exhaustion in her eyes. His mother's gestures couldn't hide the frailty that was creeping in. Derek sat beside her, gently holding her wrist, his eyes filled with concern. "What did the doctor say?" he asked. "She told me I need to rest more, take iron, eat greens." "You know, I told you the same thing." Derek smiled lightly, but the worry couldn't fade. Just a few minutes later, Dr. May Lynn entered the room. She was young, intelligent, and had a straightforward look, but her eyes were full of concern. She looked gently at Gloria and then turned to Derek. "Your mother's health is stable, but we'd like to run a few more tests. Her blood pressure is fluctuating significantly. She hasn't had a proper heart check in quite some time." Gloria waved her hand dismissively. "I'm fine." Derek nodded, not arguing. "Then let's run the tests." In the next 2 days, the results came in. Nothing too serious, but there were small signs. A leaking heart valve, mild arrhythmia, iron deficiency. Though not urgent, they couldn't be ignored. The message was clear. Life doesn't wait for anyone. That evening, they sat together, watching the Sanford and Son show in the hospital room. Gloria didn't take her eyes off the screen, her eyes a little blurry from fatigue. "You've done really well, my dear." Derek smiled softly. "You just called me my dear in front of the nurse?" Gloria smiled gently and replied, "I'm the one who brought you into this world. I have the right to call you my dear." Derek smiled but couldn't quite bring himself to smile fully. "Mom, I'm not done yet." Gloria looked at him, her eyes filled with sorrow. "You know, don't wait too long to live." Her words echoed in Derek's heart, not just as advice, but as a deep reminder. Derek looked at his mother, really looking into her eyes. The lines on her face were a testament to the years of sacrifice and endurance. Gloria, the woman who never asked for attention, but who had become the focal point of the story, was a symbol of strength and resilience. "I've been thinking about what you said, about legacy, about not trading silence," Derek said, his voice thoughtful. Gloria looked directly at him, her eyes lighting up. "I want to start something bigger," Derek continued. "A real foundation, For the workers, the drivers, the warehouse staff, supporting health, scholarships, not just articles or seminars, but real action. Gloria's smile slowly appeared, proud and gentle. Sounds like something you've always wanted. I want to name it after you, Derek said, his voice full of affection. Gloria's eyes welled up, though she tried to hide it by coughing lightly. Gloria gently replied, "You don't have to do that." But Derek responded firmly, "I need to do this because you built me." Local news began to spread, and within a few weeks the conversation shifted from confrontation to building, from criticizing past mistakes to creating new opportunities. At the first Community Day event, Derek stood behind a long table under a white tent, surrounded by food trucks, children's laughter, book donation activities, and workers who had once feared losing their jobs now enjoying the outdoor feast with their families, dreaming together of a bright future. Derek took the mic and spoke to the crowd. "I turned down $900 million. People called me crazy, but here this is worth more than all the money." The crowd clapped, not with loud applause, but with sincere, warm support. As the sun set and the parking lot grew quieter, Derek looked up at the sky, his mind drifting back to the past, thinking about Camille's father, Theron, the Hathaway meeting room, and the look on his mother's face when he took her out of that country club. Everything, all the struggles before, had led him to this moment. But just as he began to find peace, a sudden message brought him back to reality. It didn't come from headlines or articles, but from a voice he hadn't heard in years. That voice was tied to a part of his past he thought he had left behind. The message came through voicemail, with no warning, just a blinking notification on Derek's phone after a long day of meetings and interviews. He accidentally opened the voicemail as he walked through the door of his apartment, thinking it was just a reminder from Julian or a follow-up call from a provider. But the moment he heard that voice, Derek froze, unable to believe it. "Derek, it's Dwayne here. I'm not sure if you still have this number, but I heard about what you did for your mom, and I felt like I needed to reach out." Dwayne, Derek's father's brother, who hadn't been in contact for over 20 years, who had left the family right after Derek's father passed away, without a word, without any explanation. "I saw you on the news. Your mom raised you well. No surprise there. She's proud of you, and if you want to talk, here's her number." The message ended. No second call. Nothing more. Derek stood there, the key still in his hand, his eyes fixed on the dark screen. His mind was in chaos. Derek hadn't thought about Dwayne in years. When his father died of a heart attack at 49, Dwayne was the only one standing by him at the casket, promising, "I'll take care of Dad." Then Dwayne disappeared without a word. Derek remembered when he was 13, waking up on his birthday, hoping to receive a card from Dwayne. But there was nothing. A call. It never came. Derek poured himself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen counter, listening in silence. The voice now sounded slower, older, but it was his. That night he couldn't sleep. The memories of his father flooded back clearly, relentlessly. His father fixing the water heater on a cold morning, his hands covered in grease, while Dwayne brought wrapped ribs every July 4th. Then came the silence, as if someone had closed the door and forgotten to inform him. The next morning, Gloria called Derek. "I heard from Dwayne," she said, not bothering to ask how he was. Derek tightened his grip on the phone. "He left a message for me yesterday. I guess it's like he did with you." She paused. "I don't know what he wants. Maybe nothing. Maybe he wants to make amends, while there's still time. But I'm not sure I need peace with him." She paused for a moment. "Honey, sometimes peace isn't for them, it's for you." Those words echoed in his mind. After that day, he replayed the voicemail, and this time, there was no anger. He felt tired, as if a part of him had been suppressed for too long. He waited until the evening, then decided to call back. 3 rings, then a click. "Derek?" The voice came cautious but full of hope. "Yeah, it's me," Derek said. A long silence, then a soft chuckle. "You're just like your dad," Dwayne said. "I've heard that a lot." They both fell silent. Then Dwayne sighed. "I didn't call to explain this silence. I'm a coward. After Dad passed, I couldn't face anything that reminded me of him. But you, Derek, you're a mirror." Derek said nothing. I left because it was easier than staying and disappointing you. I didn't need you to succeed, Derek whispered. I just needed you to stay. Dwayne's voice cracked. I know. I know I've disappointed you. They continued talking for another 15 minutes. Not about work, not about betrayal, about fishing trips, about afternoons playing football in high school. When the call ended, Derek didn't feel complete closure, but at least he felt lighter. That weekend, during the team's retreat, Derek shared, "Forgiveness isn't agreeing. Forgiveness is just not letting bitterness take over your heart." Everyone nodded. Some smiled, while others understood more of what Derek was trying to say. When Derek left the event that evening, a young intern hurried to catch up with him. "Mr. Samuels," she said, panting, "I just want to thank you. My father always said no one could keep their morals in this business, that it was all about profit. But you've proven him wrong." He smiled, his gaze steady. "No, my mother is the one who proved that." As he returned to his car, head held high, his heart full of pride and peace, finally Derek understood. A legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you go through and what you don't want to die in silence.